Welcome to the Your Limitless Leadership podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. Here, we believe leadership isn't just about titles. It's about how you show up in every aspect of life. Whether you're leading a business, building a legacy as an entrepreneur, guiding your family, or striving to lead yourself first, this podcast is for you. Join us as we dive into real conversations about growth, decision-making, and the courage it takes to lead with purpose. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and equipped to become the limitless leader you are meant to be. This is your Limitless Leadership podcast. Let's lead without limits. Welcome to your Limitless Leadership podcast. And I have a very, very special guest today that this dude has become really close to my heart the last couple of months. I've gotten to know him. You may not know this, but just he has come on with us over the last couple months as an executive and elite level coach. And if there's one dude that's just really, really good at what he does, it is him. And my wife, Jenny, obviously introduced me to him. And I've just, sounds funny, I think I've just fallen in love with Travis. He's such a good dude. Like, it's just, you meet really good people along the way in life, and he is one of those. So I'm going to introduce him, and then we're going to get to know him, what makes him tick, what drives him, because he is just one of the most driven people I've met, and just the way he humbles himself too. But for 2 decades now, which that makes you sound old, just so you know, Travis has been he's really been in the trenches of sales and leadership. He's knocked on doors, built teams, just closing large enterprise sales as well. And we'll talk about that, from generating over, let's call it 3 million door-to-door book. Like, if you don't know what that is, that's a special skill that many of us don't have. And that was at Southwestern Advantage, where he built the #1 global team, which is no small task, because that's, correct me if I'm wrong on this, thousands of college kids as well that do it, to scaling startups, driving 5 million in ARR at companies including Salesforce, Datadog. Like, he has just proven who he is through hard work and intelligence, because it's not just you take the hard work, you build it, and he is the epitome of this, and then you really learn how to do things. But what really sets him apart is his approach. He doesn't just develop high-performing salespeople. He helps. What I've seen in him, and true to his fashion, because it's hard to teach it if you're not it, the resilience he comes with, that he fulfills in leaders, and just as a coach and a speaker, and the things he does. So he blends that strategy with the hard work, and that is something that normal people simply don't have. And that's what we will talk about today. So welcome, Mr. Travis. I'm so happy to have you on here, dude.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah.
Thank you for the kind words.
You deserve it. That's who you are. I love it. Well, tell us about you, just your background, kind of where you're from, how you got to where you are. Now, obviously, you don't have to lay out the whole thing, but just how Travis became Travis, if you will, how you got to where you are.
You know, I think after 20 years in sales, I think one of the things that's helped me through that time is the ability to connect with different people, right? And I think that comes from my background. My mom is a white Nebraskan lady with red hair and freckles. My dad is a person of color, Brazilian, from northeastern Brazil. So coming up from a blended family, growing up, bouncing around, 2 or 3 different countries in South America before the age of 11. And then moving, my mom was a diplomat for the U.S. Foreign Service. And then I moved to New Mexico for middle school and high school, college in Kentucky. So I kind of have a really well-rounded experience. And then to your point, I joined Southwestern Advantage as a freshman in college. That was kind of how I got into sales. I had a buddy that had done it the year before, and he had made some like 10 grand or something. I was like, what? You can make that in a summer? Like, my head exploded. I was paying for school out of pocket, scholarships and basically work study. And so, my first summer I went to San Francisco, California. By the end of my career, I'd been to 8 different states. I'd recruited at University of Michigan, Georgia Tech, UCLA. So I kind of had a really good experience with Southwestern, both kind of working 80 hours a week during the summer, selling educational books door to door, being one of the, top first year, top manager, number one leader, but also just getting to know people from all kinds of different communities all over the United States. I think I've lived and worked in something like 20 or 25 states, which is pretty rare, I think, for, somebody who was born in another country. So yeah, that I think is kind of my foundation, right? It's like interest in other people, genuine interest, curiosity about different cultures, different people, different, activities and events. And then, when you sell educational books door to door, 80 hours a week, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., you learn a lot about resilience, about distinguishing what you can control, what's not inside your control, right? Which obviously is, effort, attitude, and being a student of the game is pretty much all you can control, right? If you really boil it down. And so, yeah, I think that was a really good foundation. So that was kind of the beginning. After 10 years of, building 10,000 hours of door-to-door sales activity, I was kind of, top 1 or 2% of all time in Southwestern alumni, 150,000 people. I decided to get into tech sales. So I moved to New York City at the time, 2014. Pretty much if you wanted to be in tech, you had to be in San Francisco, New York, or Austin at that time. And so I moved to New York, got into tech sales, worked at a 3D printing startup as an account executive. It was like top 1 or 2 there, got recruited to be a director of sales at another 3D printing startup that was going through something called Y Combinator. For those people in tech, it's like a pretty famous tech accelerator. I built out the initial sales team, BDR, SDR team, the first $1 to 2 million in revenue, and then kind of pivoted into software sales. And that's what you mentioned, Salesforce, 360 Learning, Datadog, built a career going from kind of SMB up to enterprise account executive, selling to companies like Verizon and Accenture, some of the biggest global companies in the world, driving 6-figure deals there. So that's kind of the sales journey. And I think my background.
You breezed over top 1 or 2% out of 150,000 people over time. Honestly, man, and take the humble out of the equation here for a second. What sets you apart? Like, what makes you, can you pinpoint that? What makes you different than, because that's not normal. And hopefully, right? Like, that's not normal. And I know you're kind of like, that's who I am. What do you do better, differently, more of than just other people? Work ethic's one thing, but you know what I'm saying here, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, it's difficult to stick around summer after summer after summer in Southwestern, right? It's very much a grind. You not only have to keep performing in sales as a salesperson, but as you grow in the business, you start managing teams, you start managing organizations, so I was, by the end of my 10-year career, I was managing 50 different college students during a summer, right? With kind of all over a state or two where we were selling at that time. So I think, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think it had much to do with like sales. I think I've been doing a lot of kind of therapy work and trauma work, these different things. I think I always struggled with, if you've heard of people who are raised in a different country than the passport of their parents, they're called third culture kids. And it's the way I grew up is always like never quite Brazilian enough to feel like I belonged in Brazil. But then I moved to the US and got bullied for being different. So never quite American enough to belong in the US. And you're sort of this part of both cultures, but belong to neither, right? And I think Southwestern, in a weird way, because I started and I was a top first year and then I was a top manager and I just kind of like had a lot of success at it very quickly. It was one of the first communities where I felt like I belonged, if that made sense. And so I think because of that, even though it was completely conditional belonging based on results, right? Like it's not the ultimate best form of belonging, but it was one that I really had never felt.
You earned it.
I earned it with the results that I had. And I continued doing it for, I think, a lot longer than most people do. So I had 10 summers where I think the average person probably only makes it 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that. So part of it's just the stick-to-itiveness and the you called it resilience, but yeah, just like I will keep trying. If I lose, it's because I tried my hardest and it didn't work, right? But like that's kind of always been actually high school, I was really proud of this. I played basketball senior year. I wasn't a starter. I was the sixth man.
Okay.
And I was the guy that would come in, guard their best player, and end the game with like 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 fouls, right? That was like I was that guy. The jump on the floor. One of my teachers called me the human rug burn because I was diving for loose balls, that type of thing. I'm an effort guy. And at the end of the year, my senior year, the team voted on 2 awards. One was the MVP, and one was called the Tiger Pride Award for like the person with the biggest heart, the biggest effort. I won the Tiger Pride Award voted on by my teammates. So it's been just how I've been wired, I think. I think struggled when my dad kind of left, started a new family. Like you really feel kind of worthless a little bit. And so one of the ways that I tried to like get worth was hard work and achieving results, right? So I think a combination of all those things, kind of my past, my effort, kind of what I developed, and then also the context, I think all of that led to, being like stuck around long enough and did well enough to be one of the, top 2%, let's call it.
Isn't it crazy? You kind of answered the question right there. I was going to ask about where did that come from? Where did you learn to more, or live into it, right? And it's when you just talked about your dad a little bit, isn't it crazy where things from the past shape us and we don't really realize it till we get older. And now we know why. I love that, man. So, okay. Again, not that we're stuck on 80 hours a week and books and all these different things, but you top sales, top leader, those are 2 drastically different things. Did you ever look at it like when you're becoming a leader, how can I do all that? How can I fit all that into my schedule? How did you handle that? And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, but obviously you did it for quite a while. So you had to learn to manage it. You had to learn to manage your schedule and control what you can control, like you said. How did you learn that? And what were some of the hard points that you had to overcome to do that?
You mentioned something in your intro where it's something along the lines, the way that I phrase it is you can't teach what you don't know and you can't lead where you don't go, right? And I think that's a big kind of Southwestern maxim. And so I really took that to heart. I think a simpler way of saying that is lead by example, right? And so I think I had the results and I didn't do, there were some people that did the job in this esoteric way that was hard to duplicate. I just did the job, right? So I had a kind of duplicatable model of how to work at the job that I was able to teach to other people. But then also, I think being a leader, I grew up both in kind of high school and sports, as well as transitioning into college and then Southwestern. I had great sort of role models and leaders, whether it was from my church, from school, from, university, from Southwestern. And so I think I've always, I had a lot of older men step in and be kind of the dad that I didn't grow up with. And so I think I always had this kind of desire to be that, for other people, like an older presence that they could count on, And so I think that was really my big goal. And the interesting thing in Southwestern is that, I think being a leader there, obviously during the summer, you just sleep less. You do stuff in the morning before you go to work. You finish work and you've got 2 or 3 hours of calls and work to do. And then you just kind of squeeze it in. There's not much that you can do. And then of course on Sunday you run the kind of the training and the get-togethers and those type of things. But I think 2 things. Number one, you learn how to, I think somebody said the mark of a great leader is delegation, right? And it's basically hiring people that are better than you and then delegating the stuff that they're better at than you to them. And so I think I was really good at that. I had some great folks that I would recruit. They'd come back as, second year or third year managers. And then I would empower them with tasks or responsibilities, right? That got them excited, but also allowed me to spread the workload out and be able to lead a little bit more effectively. So I think that was a big thing. And then, I think in recruiting, to your point, I'm on a college campus. I'm handing out these forms in a class. You fill one out. Then you come to an info session and I'm like, let's go to a place that we don't know where we're going yet. Let's live with people we haven't met yet and don't know where you're living. And let's sell these books at 100% commission to make an undetermined amount of money. So don't know where we're going, don't know who we're living with, don't know how much money we're making. That's a really tough sell, right? So I think very good at, and you learn this in door to door to an extent. You show up at a door and then you build enough trust that you're leaving with a $600 check after 30 minutes, right? So I have some of that, but recruiting was more of relationship building and doing that over a longer time, right? And so it's to me, it was similar because it's definitely the building trust, but then also I think one thing that set me apart as a leader in Southwestern is I was never scared to be honest and real with my people about what the experience during the summer truly was. And so I would rather almost scare someone away and get them to not come out with me than to bring someone who's not prepared. And then the reality of their situation hits them like a ton of bricks and they all quit in the first 1 or 2 weeks, which is, if you look at the stats in Southwestern, it's something ridiculous. Like half the people quit in the first 3 weeks. To me, that was because they weren't adequately prepared for what the first 3 weeks were going to look like. Right. And so the year that I had the number one team, Brent, I brought a 9-person team. 8 of them finished, and we beat a guy who brought 20 people that summer because I think I over prepared almost my team, and I was able to really help them stick around and be ready for everything. And then the final thing is, like, I think building a vision that everyone can buy into. I remember we were from the University of Michigan, and I basically told my students, I was like, look, Michigan's a top 5 public university. People at Michigan love hearing that. They're like, yeah, Michigan's Harvard of the Midwest. They love that. And so I'd be like, Michigan, you guys are a top 5 university. Wouldn't it make sense that we would be a top 5 team in Southwestern? And I kind of built this attitude of like, this is our birthright almost. We just got to be Michigan men and women and do our thing. And so I kind of sold this vision. And honestly, luckily, out of the gate, we were the number one team week 1, 2, and 3 in a row. And then we just never, we never let it go. We ended this summer number 1. So it was pretty cool. It was a great experience. But yeah, I think build trust, obviously, like, be honest, over prepare, emotionally, everything. And then, yes, build a vision that people can get excited about and buy into. I think those were some of the things I learned in Southwestern at being a leader. And I took a lot of that to, my next jobs where I was a sales manager and that type of thing as well.
I'm going to go back to something you said, because you talked about delegation. Yeah. And I do want to touch on obviously, your transparency. You set expectations that people knew. And I guess what I see so many times, as you touched on it, we don't set the expectations. We just want them to do what we think they should be doing. So in our mind, if they don't do it, we get frustrated because they should be, instead of setting the right expectations for people and helping them out. And that's right there was what set you apart from other people, because you saw that. Did somebody do that for you? And then my question about delegation, the empowerment, you said you empowered other people. Did that come easy? Did that come hard? How did you train yourself to do that? Because so many people, I mean, me included, us as leaders, we want things done the way we want them, and we do them this way, right? We can all do it better, everybody in the room. It sounds like it was pretty easy for you, but tell me about that a little bit, if you will.
So actually, the answer is very similar to both those questions, but I'll answer them individually, but you'll see the theme. The theme was, I'm very utilitarian, Brent, and I want to do things in the most effective way. Usually that is like one of my goals in everything. And so for the first part you asked, which was the expectation setting, I didn't mention the year before the number one team, where I brought 8 people and only 3 people finished, and everyone washed out. And it was a terrible experience. And I kind of did a postmortem after that summer. And this is important too. I went and I talked to the folks in the company who were retaining the most amount of their students, because I identified this area that I was bad at, which was, okay, I recruited almost 10 people, but when only 3 finish, you can't compete for a top team, right?
Yeah.
So I went to, folks like, I think it was Bernard, Virgie, Ryan, these old other like top leaders who were good at retaining. And one of the things I learned from them was how to emotionally and properly prepare people, right? And then it made sense, because it's like, out of fear, I wasn't being fully honest with the team about what the reality of the situation was, right? But then they got to the situation. It was exactly what we all knew it would be, and they all flamed out. That's not effective, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, it was like pretty simple to say, okay, well, let's just be more upfront and honest. And that was where I kind of figured out, let's not be just honest to scare, but it's like the reason I'm doing this, other people aren't telling their people this because they're scared, but I believe in you guys as students at the top 5 university in America that you can handle this and that we can go out and be that. So I kind of almost like transformed it into a good thing, an empowering thing versus like a scare tactic of, oh, it's going to be so difficult. There's all this stuff we're going to go through. It's like, I kind of finessed it where it was like, I'm sharing something most other people are scared of sharing because I believe enough in you guys that you can handle it and that we can go do this kind of thing.
But you also took something as it didn't go the way I wanted to. I'm going to go what you said. I can control my development. Yeah. I seeked out people that have done it before me and wanted to know how they did it.
Yeah. And then me, I'm never like the best person to create something, but I'm an excellent optimizer. So I took all this stuff that they were doing and then I kind of improved on it, optimized it, made it better, and then delivered it, to my team. So that's usually, I think, remember back when I said what you can't control, right? Attitude, effort, and being a student of the game. Like that's exactly what that looks like, I guess, in that scenario. It's the same thing with the delegation piece, Brent. So to your point, most leaders, they struggle with delegation because they're really, really good at X. And if you hire someone or are developing someone who's not potentially as good as you, they're not going to be as good at X as you are, right? But if you think about, you basically have to shift your perspective to, are you worried about X, which is like the blinders on the one thing? Or are you worried about the overall experience and like organization and result? Because ultimately, you only have so much bandwidth. If there's, let's say, 10 or 15 X's, you cannot do 15 X's at the highest effective level and also do your other job requirements. So you kind of think about it as like, okay, I could try to like have control and do everything myself. But if you zoom out, that's not going to be as effective at the end of the day as delegating certain things to people who hopefully can, get 80% of what you do, and then coaching them and tweaking them and improving them until they're into that 80, 90 percentile range of what you could do as X. But now you can scale this thing to much, much bigger and much more effective because you're able to delegate. So it's utilitarian, right? It's what's most effective. That's something I'm always thinking about.
Well, so you took that, and here's my next question, kind of the evolution of Trav, I guess, if you will, and you moved to New York. Where were you living when you moved there? And what was kind of the decision to do that? And how did you moving from wherever to New York doesn't matter where you're moving from. It's New York. How did you make that decision? Why? What went into that?
The same way most people make decisions in their 20s. There was a girl that I really liked that lived in New York.
Perfect.
Yep.
I love it.
But no, I'm being a little facetious, but that's just, that's 50%. The other part was, I was living in Los Angeles. I was running a 50-person organization from UCLA down to SDSU, everything in between for Southwest. It was my 10th summer. I was coming to the end. The goalpost kept moving on promotion to the next level. It was like, all right, I've chased this. There's only so many years they can promise you, hey, next year is going to be the year, So after a lot of that, I left the business. And again, I wanted to go into tech sales as I was kind of doing a lot of B2C. And I thought, what would B2B sales look like? What about selling to organizations or businesses, right? I want to work on that piece of the career. I want to sit at a computer. I don't want to go running around knocking on doors all day, right? I kind of had this idea of let's transition and see if there's maybe a little bit of a easier way to do sales. And so 2 things happened. Yeah, San Francisco, Austin, New York were the 3 kind of tech zones in America at that time. And I had a buddy of mine who used to work at Southwestern who was starting a sales team at a startup in New York. So it was a combo. I got an interview there. I got my first AE role there. I was able to skip the entry level kind of SDR, BDR simply because my friend valued my 10 years of Southwestern experience, even though it's hard to translate that on a resume. Yeah. So I got to skip kind of the entry level 1 or 2 years of sales. And also, I had an ex that was at New York Film Academy. So it kind of all came together and moved to New York in 2014 to start my tech career.
What was obviously that's cross country. Was there any struggles, any points that you're like, what did I get myself into? Or is it more of all right, let's do this thing?
Well, remember my bio, right? Born in Brazil, did kindergarten in 3 different cities on 2 different continents. By the time I moved to New Mexico, it was my 8th move. Did high school in New Mexico, college in Kentucky, bounced around Southwestern all over the U.S. To me, like, it's weird, like, sticking around. I lived for 7 years in New York, and it's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. That's why I consider myself an adopted New Yorker. But yeah, I think moving just based on my background's no sweat. Dropping in, building community, all of that I'm pretty good at.
What I love about you is you're just very laid back, if you will, about what you have done and how you've created it. With leadership, because you're such a high level person and you run so hard and so fast and all these different things, did you struggle with, was there people that didn't do it your way? Did you ever struggle with that? Or did you develop yourself to understand, I'm just going to meet them where they're at? I will figure this out. Do you see what I mean? Like, was there ever issues there at all?
Yeah. I always tell this story. I had on my number 1 team, I had a student named Huey Chang. Okay. And Huey is a super talented guy. He was at University of Michigan when I met him. Now he runs the number 2 bar in North America. It's called Double Chicken Please in New York City. He has this restaurant empire he's built over the last 10 years of like 5 or 6 restaurants, including one of the top 50 bars in the world. And we were kind of towards the end of the summer. And a question I love to ask as a leader, because it's just a level set for you, is, hey, scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank me as a leader at this moment? Right? And I asked that question to Huey, and he said some number. I can't remember what number he said. And the follow-up question is always, great. What do I have to do in the next week or 2 so that the next time I ask this question, I'll be X plus 1? Whatever they said, I'll be at the next level up. If they said 8, what do I got to do in the next couple weeks to be a 9, right? If they say 10, then great, keep it rolling. There ain't nothing wrong, right? But if they don't say 10, I think you have an opportunity to improve as a leader. And I remember Huey said, I need you to be harder on me. I need you to be tougher on me, because that's not my style, right? I'm very encouraging. I'm very, that's more. I was raised by a single mom. That's like my kind of vibe. And so, yeah, Huey said, I need you to be tough on me. And I remember I said, okay, I can do that. And so we made some commitments for the next week. He was going to do certain controllable things. Fast forward a week, we get there, and he didn't follow up on his commitments. And it like felt so weird. But I basically was like, bro, what the hell? Like, you committed to this stuff last week. You had all the time in the world to do it. You didn't follow through. Like, what happened? And he started talking about, car issues, whatever. I don't want to hear your excuses. Like, you committed something, you go and do it. What are you going to do next week? Right? Let's not have this conversation again next week. And sure enough, made some commitments. He ended up, actually, it's right behind me, this bat right here. He won one of these bats for having his best week of the summer in sales in one of his last 2 weeks on the backs of that conversation, right? He went out and did it, executed the effort. And at the end of the summer, when you're the most talented you've been all summer, when you execute the effort, you do well. And he did really well. And I learned a really valuable lesson from that conversation, which is, to your point, Brent, that's a long way to answer your question, but
love it.
You have a way that works for you.
Yeah.
But when you're a leader, the goal isn't to treat everybody like you, because if you're only recruiting you, your team's going to suck because you have to recruit people that are good at the shit you're not good at. But number 2 is also when you recruit people that are different than you, that are skilled differently than you, that have different values and things they bring to the table than you, you then have to learn how to map your leadership style to what's most effective, again, that word, to them, right? And that was like what I learned at that time. And I've held on to that ever since.
I love that you asked that question, the 1 to 10, because then he flat out tells you, this is what I need from you. This is how you can hold me accountable, where he just gave you permission. Mm-hmm. Now you're the leader and not the manager. You're not the micromanager that's telling somebody what to do. You're helping him get to where he wants to go instead of where you want him to go.
Totally.
2 drastically different ways to look at it. I love that story because that's
a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah. I don't know that I, at the time, actualized it like that, but yeah, that is the end result.
That is. So many times that's where we fall short as leaders, is we want things done because we want them done. But if we simply just put them in a place and ask them what they want to do, you're probably going to find the same common denominator anyway, because they're there for a reason.
Have you ever read a book called Good to Great, Brent?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think of what you just talked about. I think of like the level 5 leader, right? Which is like when a leader, when things go wrong, level 5 leaders look in the mirror, accept responsibility, and go double down and work harder. When things go right, they look out the window, they praise their team, they do that, right? That's not the exact same thing, but what you're saying is like, what I heard when you said is like, leaders can't just be about their goals. It's my team, it's my goals, it's my results. Leaders have to learn how to say, what are my team's goals? What does this individual want? What is their why? What are their goals? And then map to that, right? It's kind of like the Zig Ziglar. He says, you can get everything you want out of life if you help enough other people get what they want out of life, right? It's that same concept. I'm throwing quotes out, but we're around this kind of conversation, I think.
That's crazy. It took me, for those of you listening, it took me 3 times to read Good to Great. I would get to like page 100 and I would go, I couldn't correlate it with what I was doing was the problem. I just thought it was a book that we're supposed to read because it's a book you're supposed to read. And that's part of reading is when you do it, find a way to correlate it with what you're doing and how you're doing it. But we can talk about books all day long, but if you don't implement anything,
totally,
you're just the person that talks about books all day long, basically.
Or podcasts these days. I feel like podcasts, books. People say, I read something. Oh, you listened, huh? Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Bring me back to when you talk about leadership, okay? And I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I would love to hear your 2, maybe 3 things that for you that you had to learn over time. And that's whether it was what you just talked about, but that people can take away and go, okay. And maybe it's the controllables, maybe it's not, but this is what I did when I talked to people, when I worked with my team, when I had the ups and downs, learning from my mistakes, whatever it is. Things that you saw or did that helped you become better, I guess, put it that way. And again, take the humble out of the equation because I know that's a big question, but
yeah. I mean, I definitely think one of the things we covered, which is kind of like I think of the difference between the golden rule and the platinum rule, right? Like golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Platinum rule, I don't know where I've heard this before, but it's like do unto others as they would have done unto them, right? Like it's mapping, because you can't just do unto others what you want them to do to you, because the other individual, think of it like your fiance, right? Or like your wife or your coworker, or whatever it is. Like you have to map to like, what does this person want for them? And then I have to map to that, not necessarily what I would want from them, because those are very different things, right? So I think that was like that conversation with Huey, and a lot of lessons along the way helped me understand how to, every individual on your team is wired different. They have different whys. They have different needs. They're motivated differently. I'm a sales guy. I've been a sales guy for 20 years. I'm not motivated by money. A lot of salespeople are very money motivated, right? For most salespeople, you talk money, that's what you need. But if it's someone like me, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, right? Because that's like, you have to speak to what motivates your team. So a lot of it, and I guess maybe this is a adjacent skill to the same concept, is you have to have curiosity and you have to seek to understand your team, and you have to ask questions and you have to really learn about them, right? It's this kind of seek first to understand before being understood, or the people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? There's a lot of different quotes around this, but I really do believe that, where I think I had to learn how to take the time, learn my people, learn their whys, learn what motivated them, and then map you have tools in your tool belt as a leader, just like in sales, right? You ask a bunch of different questions, and then you kind of have tools. You can tailor your demonstration or tailor your presentation to what's important to the prospect. You have to do the same thing with your team. You have to learn your team and then tailor your leadership tool belt to what's most important to each individual member on your team when you're in those conversations. So that was a big one. The second thing I learned at Voodoo Manufacturing when I was building out the sales team there was, I think, like one thing, especially in corporate leadership, that goes a little bit understated, is the idea of cross-functional collaboration, and how the sales team at Voodoo only exists and only does well if the marketing team is feeding it leads. It only exists or it does well if the 3D engineering team could build the models that my clients wanted to print on the 3D printers. It only did well if the 3D printing mechanics could keep the machines going and print the thing. So even though like I was sales and I was in charge of sales, my sales goals would often be at odds with the goals of the 3D print engineers, the marketing team, maybe not as much the marketing team. You're usually kind of working hand in hand, but the idea is, you have to understand how to contextualize, again, your organization, your needs, my sales team within the larger context of the 3D engineers, the 3D printing mechanics, the marketing team, et cetera, right? And understanding that like your role doesn't happen in a vacuum, I think is really important, because sometimes we get really myopic on sales, right? And like, oh, we got to close this deal, but it's like, dude, we're overloaded. We don't have the bandwidth to make the model. We don't have the factory space to do the thing. And it's like, you had to learn how to manage all those different competing priorities in a way that, again, is most effective, right? So I think that would be a big thing that I learned.
Wow.
You said top 3. I think
2. That's
okay. Those are my top 2 that come to mind.
What you just said about learning your people, taking the time to get to know them, being curious and understanding them, and realizing it's not about you, it's about them, and what they do leads into you. Your job is just to guide that and help that and develop that what they want. And then the next one, I haven't thought about that for a long time, but it's even when you look at, let's call it operations. So let's lump everybody together over here, and sales.
Yeah. And revenue even, right? Ops and rev.
If you say, well, the salespeople need this and do this and do this, but if you don't have the operations and what have you, if you're not working together, you're working against each other. And that's, man, you just hit that pretty hard. The top companies or top people I've seen is they work hand in hand together, and there's great communication across the board there too.
Easier said than done, but yeah, oftentimes it felt like a battle at my company between us and the 3D. It's like, well, we're trying to drive the revenue, guys. Like, and it's like, so yeah, I learned the hard way basically, but yeah.
Well, think about the personalities there too, where the sales personalities were let's call it, most of the time we're the A personalities. Let's go get it. Let's drive. Let's go. And your operations are more they're thinkers. They're not as much the doers. They're the thinkers. And so to build that collaboration, again, it's that leadership that you just said, which leads into helping each other out too at the same time. So yeah. I forgot to mention this. Trav's getting married in November. Congratulations.
Yeah, appreciate it.
How did you two meet? I got to ask this.
Yeah. Well, funny story. Your wife introduced us. So I was building
That's crazy.
my team at Voodoo Manufacturing.
Okay.
And, this had been about a year and a half since I left Southwestern. So I wasn't super connected still, but I valued the foundation of sales that Southwestern provides, right? So I was calling a couple buddies of mine that were still in Southwestern, Jenny, your wife being one of them. And I basically said, hey, if you were building a tech startup in New York, initial sales hire, who do you know that you used to work with that's leaving Southwestern that you would build like your team around, right? That you plant the flag on and say, I'm going to build around this individual. And Jenny said, you should call Nicole. And so, yeah, I called Nicole and I said, hey, got your number from Jenny. I'm Travis, old book guy, starting this team. Jenny said that you're kind of think about your next chapter, right? Post Southwestern. Tell me what that looks like. And Nicole said, well, look, I want to be in sales. I don't really have a preference of what type of sales role. I'm open to anything. My one non-negotiable is I'm from North Jersey. I don't want to be in New York City. I want to be somewhere else. I said, sick. Let me tell you about a job in Brooklyn that I think you're going to be really excited about. And yeah, I was just, after 10 years of convincing college students to work with me for an undetermined amount of money in an undetermined location, living with undetermined people, it was pretty easy to convince Nicole to come to New York for a determined amount of money in a determined place, working for a very finite company that made more sense. So yeah, I ended up recruiting her and yeah, we came Became good friends again. It was kind of like,
That's awesome.
it ended up being sort of a sales versus everybody mentality at this company because no one else was revenue focused. It was all engineers and then like 2 or 3 salespeople.
Okay. Yeah.
So Nicole and I were in the trenches just trying to like close deals and keep the revenue growing. And yeah, we developed a great friendship. We left the company, worked at other companies, dated other people, but just became like best friends in the city. She introduced me to music festivals and live music jam bands, things that I love to this day. So just became good friends through that.
I love, again, the way you breeze over things. Like when you asked Jenny, you pinpointed who you were looking for, who you wanted. You painted the picture for them, just like you would on a referral, right? Like, tell me somebody. Then you're recruiting. So you're always recruiting as a leader. And that's one of the things I think we fall short of at times, that we don't paint the picture and we don't consistently recruit. You just did it. And again, what you said, you had done it for so long, so you've created the normalcy of it and the habit of it, that it's just who you are. For other people, that's uber hard. But when you do hard things, the other things become easier. Like, it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's funny how you breeze right past that because it's so ingrained in you and you've done it for so long that it's just who Travis is. And that's how you get to where you are. I don't know how else to say it, but that's how you become successful. Right?
Well, you said something really key there too, which is that, anything new at first is difficult.
Yeah.
But really, all it is discomfort. And if you lean into discomfort, right, there's that quote, growth occurs right at the edge of your comfort zone, right? So I think that's one thing for me, at least, of like, all growing up, bouncing around, never really feel like I belong, like, getting bullied in middle school. I was always kind of at the edge of my comfort zone through life. So I think doing hard things, just sort of, my whole life has been pretty hard. So I grew up in a single-wide trailer in rural New Mexico, getting bullied for being different. Like I think like I've dealt with much bigger problems than getting a door slammed in my face or, getting a rejection, which is really ultimately the worst thing that can happen in sales or recruiting is a no. And then 5 seconds later, you're in the exact same place you were before you asked the question, before you put someone in a situation to make a decision or not. So I think for me, the risk of that, or the perceived risk, is very low, because either way, I'm right where I was before, except I had the opportunity to not be by making the ask, by doing the thing, by whatever it is, right? So I think that's really important. And I would say in general, leaning into discomfort is the only way you grow, in my opinion, because if you stay in your comfort zone, growth doesn't really happen. It happens very, very incrementally. If you want to accelerate growth, get outside the comfort zone.
I love the way you make it so normal, from everything you've done, from starting to sell books to first your family, dad, being in different places, school, that just became normal. It's what you do. Selling books, leading a team just became normal. You're knocking on doors, getting told no, whatever, recruiting, all these different, it's just normal. I don't know, man. I don't know how to say it. Just what you have developed in you and who you are. I wish we could just take that and transfer it to other people and say, when you just do the things that sometimes they don't have to be uncomfortable, but make you, what'd you say? Like, it brings discomfort.
Yeah.
Like, it's not this huge thing. It's just kind of these little things.
Yeah.
But it almost builds this muscle or callus or what have you. And you get really, really good at what you do. And that's,
yeah, muscle is a great analogy. It's like if you go to the gym and you start working out with X weight, it's very difficult. But if you go to the gym 2-3 times a week with that weight, after a month, it'll be easier, right? Like, that's life. And we're talking about the kind of emotional side, which is tougher, right? Because it's your nervous system. And I think a lot of times we're conditioned just to want safety and to want comfort and to, I think homeostasis is good as humans. Everyone just wants status quo, right? That's like, you think of every company, every individual, but the guy who brought me into Southwestern, his name is Stevie Brown. He recruited me and he was my first organizational leader in Southwestern. And he always had this concept that stuck with me, which is, have you heard of the slight edge mentality, Brent?
I know the book, but tell me.
Never read the book, so yeah, maybe this will connect, maybe it won't. But I'm sure maybe my former manager did. But Stevie always used to talk about slide edge mentality. Is if we're supposed to get up at 7, set your alarm for 6:59. If we're supposed to go get 30 demos a day, get 31. If you're supposed to work for 12 hours, go work 13. Right? Like just do a little bit incremental more. But if you think about it as like everything takes practice, if you do incrementally more, then by the end of a week, you have an extra half day of practice. By the end of a month, you have an extra 2 days of practice. By the end of it keeps accelerating, and it basically like your snowball of momentum goes quicker when you think about it in like that slide edge. And so I think, I think that's always just been kind of a thing. So what I'm describing, which is the edge of your comfort zone, getting out of it, that's your slide edge to growth, right? Because you can grow in your comfort zone. It's just going to take so much longer because you're not putting yourself in situations to accelerate. And again, what's most effective, Brent? Doing it from the comfort zone or trying to accelerate it going out, right? So that's just the utilitarian piece of me, I think is always in the background saying, what's the fastest way? What's the most effective way to do this? So I don't question it. If it's more effective, I just do it, I'm not like a nihilist. I have values, but as long as you're not hurting anyone, if it's more effective, do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on here. Like holy crap. This has been so good, man. Just getting in the mind of how you work and what you have done and how you've created it. I hope people take that and go, because you haven't said anything then most of us don't, right? We just don't. It's things that you've implemented and done that have created the resiliency. Go back to that, the discipline, the consistency, the slight edge, the leadership, meeting people where they're at, all these different things. Where can people find you? If they want to talk to you and they want to dig in with you and they want help, where can they find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. All my personal info's right in my banner. So give me a shout, email, text. I'm on Instagram, actually as DJ Travi. I have a little side hustle on the music side of things around here in Nashville and Music City. So find me there. And happy to chat anytime. You can find me at yourlimitlesscoach.com as well on the coach page. You can check out my bio and my info's there as well. So always happy to chat. And, I do believe in sort of, call it karma, call it paying it forward. I've had a lot of people that have poured into me with no expectation of anything in return. Like, give me a shout. Would love to chat and offer, 15, 20 minutes of advice on whatever it is.
It's fun when we can do that, isn't it? Just give people back without having to think there's something in return. Just truly doing what's right.
Yeah, I have a nonprofit in Uganda. Actually, find me at ugandafamilies.org. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that sponsors kids in Western Uganda. Again, I've given a bunch of money over the last few years, and now I have sponsors, and we're trying to create a scalable organization to help more students. But it's one of the things I'm most proud of, and another great way to connect with me is through there.
Thank you. You are just a good human, man. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for being on here.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Brent. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Your Limitless Leadership podcast with Jenny and Brent Widman. We hope today's conversation inspired you to think differently about leadership, not just in your career, but in every part of your life. Remember, leadership starts with leading yourself first. It's about taking action, making bold decisions, and showing up with purpose. Now, it's time to take what you've heard today and put it into practice. Whether it's in your business, your community, your family, or your own personal growth, start leading without limits. You have the power to become the leader you're meant to be. Until next time, keep pushing your boundaries and leading with purpose.